What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm Sean Davis. We got a very special guest on the show. One of the very few people that will make me do a podcast outside of my own space. Like, I'm on the road right now. I'm recording this at my job at the high school I coach at. But my guy, Jayson Timpf, one of the best guys in the media right now. I'm going to give you your flowers really quickly. I had a tweet that at the time of this recording, I probably posted maybe an hour ago now, like kind of slandering national media because they're talking about LeBron playing and how does that affect his legacy when it's the second round of the playoffs and the Lakers were eliminated a week and a half ago. So Jayson's one of the best. I don't agree with everything he says, but I know there's a billion people that disagree with half the things I say. So Jayson's awesome. Jayson works with the Volume, host of the Hoops Tonight show, part of the Volume as well. Jayson, welcome into the show, bro. Glad to have you back on. This is awesome.
Dude, I'm looking forward to it, Sean. It's good to see you again. As we were talking on before the show, I always have a special level of admiration for the people that are giving back to the young level of basketball players in the world as we try to set up the next generation. And I really appreciate, just like everybody else, all of you out there who are coaching at the high school level, especially because you and I know there's not money in coaching high school. We're doing it for the love of the game. We're doing it for the love of the game. We're doing it for the kids. And I have a ton of respect for everything you're doing, man. And I'm excited to break down some hoops today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's not waste any time. And I think the perfect place to start is with probably the biggest shocker of round two thus far, which is Minnesota-Denver. I had Denver heading into the series winning in 7, but I said heading into the series, I felt no confidence whatsoever in that pick. And what we saw through 2 games is probably the most demoralized we've seen Denver look over the past 2.5 seasons or so. What is your takeaway so far through 2 games? And is there any shot that Denver is able to pull off and a miraculous? Because they have to win now 2 on the road in Minnesota to get this back to being a real series. Is there any hope for Denver in your eyes?
I do think there's still hope. I don't really think this series has been much about basketball at this point. I think it's mostly been about just straight physical competitive energy and Minnesota just kind of punking Denver. And I thought Reggie Jackson had the most, interesting quotes after game 2. And he was just talking about this isn't about basketball. This is about will and manhood. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting way to put it. I was telling you a story before the show. I was doing a 3-on-3 drill, kind of setting up some actions, doing some read and react stuff with my high school kids. And one of my younger players was getting bullied off of his spot for a catch he just had to secure a spot on the floor to run a dribble handoff. And he was getting bullied off a spot by one of our seniors. And he was looking at me like I was going to do something for him. And I'm like, no, man, this is something that can happen in a basketball game. Sometimes a really physical player, especially one that's bigger and stronger than you, can try to bully you, and then it's not about basketball anymore. It's until you figure out how to win that kind of confrontation, you're in trouble. And that's the thing. There's been a lot of focus on the refs. Jamal Murray looking at the refs, Michael Malone looking at the refs, and it's a lot of looking for some sort of external support, and that's not the case. What's really going to turn this series around is Denver going in on Friday night and meeting Minnesota's force with force. I know you and I are not the biggest Darvin Ham fans in the world, but that's a quote of his that I really like. You got to meet force. You got to meet force with force, right? And again, the simple way that I look at it is, there's no doubt that Minnesota has the personnel to inflict a certain amount of damage to Denver's offense. That goes without saying. We have to acknowledge that. But the flip side of that is Minnesota is a team that was a mediocre offense all year long. Now Minnesota has been the best offense in the through the playoffs to this point. That's a big thing that I think is going under the radar. Is Ants playing at an extremely high level, Cats playing at an extremely high level. They're getting consistent production off the bench from Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid and all these guys, and that's all great. But the truth of the matter is it is still the same personnel that was capable of struggling during the regular season. No, Phoenix hasn't done it yet, and you haven't done it yet. But you have to find a way through your own physical imposition, through your own defensive effort, to play Minnesota into lulls on the offensive end. If you do, then you can do what you did in the first half of game 1, which is start getting going in transition, and that's where you can really kind of ignite the fire underneath your team and kind of play defense to offense. Again, this is not like the Lakers series where we're trying to out-execute the Lakers in the half court. No, you have to destroy their offense the same way they're trying to destroy yours. And to me, if they go into game 3 on Friday and they bring that kind of bully ball aspect on both ends of the floor, all you really have to do is win one game. You win one game and it's a series, because then it's like, I win game 4, now we're back in commanding position. So like it's there for the taking. My thing is like Jamal Murray leaving the game without speaking to the press. That kind of concerns me about where his head is at. Does he view himself as a victim in this situation and not just somebody who needs to compete better? We'll see, but it's not over, but it definitely looks dark there in Denver.
So one of the things that I said heading into the series was, and this is why, honestly, I still felt fairly confident my Denver repeating and winning the championship this year and ultimately winning the series, was I felt watching that Lakers series, I think Denver is pretty clearly a tier ahead of LA. But for that series, LA was fairly even with Denver, which is not how it should have been. Because my thought process for this series was, okay, this is not Denver's final form, because Jamal Murray had some really good fourth quarters. Game 2, obviously, game 5 are the ones that really stand out. But you're like, bro, Jamal Murray did not have a full wire-to-wire, just dominant game that we saw a lot in last season's title run. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to assume Jamal Murray, we can get more high-level play out of him. And through 2 games, you haven't gotten that yet. Jokic has been really frustrated in this series, and there's a few plays where, Jason, I'm like, bro, I don't think anybody is guarded. Like the Nuggets 3-man action that they like to run, where it's Jokic at the elbow. You have like a rip screen, it's a elbow entry to Jokic, rip screen for Jamal. Jamal goes through, and then you get the gut screen right back, and it's dribble handoff for Jokic with Jamal. And it's normally MPJ like kind of replacing out to the wing, or it's Aaron Gordon. It's just so hard to guard it. Minnesota's guarded that the best I've ever seen anybody guard it.
Oh my gosh.
These past 2.5 seasons. So, I mean, I'm going to agree with what you said mostly. I think one thing that I also highlighted after game 1 was Jokic needs to be more aggressive off the rip. Like he has some.
It's been such a bizarre Jokic series.
It's been crazy. He has some like late Miami second stint LeBron in him, to a sense where it's like early in the games, Bron were really not low managed, but like, all right, first quarter, especially was in Cleveland. All right, Kevin Love, go get your touches and get you going. Fourth quarter, I'll dominate. It's like, bro, no, go dominate off rip. They can't guard you for real. And now when you do start being aggressive, you're in a 10-point lull because we've been trying to beat KCP touches for a quarter. So I think if Denver wants to get back in the series, like you said, they need to be more aggressive. And Denver is a good defense, but Minnesota's kind of anything they've won at will through 2 games, and it's really just through force. A shout out to Ant, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, J.M. McDaniels. Rudy didn't play in game 2, but their ball pressure, they have frustrated Jamal Murray so much that they forced turnovers against a team that doesn't turn the ball over.
I know.
And that's the way you can kind of help your offense in the half court, which isn't always consistent. But Denver has to win game 3, in my opinion. You go down 3-0, and I think it's probably wraps.
They've been ball pressuring Jokic a lot full court as well. It's been super interesting. It's very clearly part of the game plan. It's funny. You just reminded me of something, kind of comparing them to last year, because Denver just hasn't quite looked like Denver last year. And so I just pulled a stat real quick. This is crazy. This is my first time looking at these in the postseason. So Jamal Murray last year in the playoffs, a jump shot was worth 1.14 points. Okay. This year, Jamal Murray jump shot worth 0.78 points. So like basically a 30, what's that, like a 40, 45% reduction in efficiency. Then Nikola Jokic last year in the playoffs, a jump shot was worth 1.21 points per shot. Okay. This year in the postseason, a Jokic jump shot is worth 0.89 points per shot. So like one of the things too, and I didn't really see it coming with Jamal, because Jamal I like legitimately think is like a year in, year out perennially great jump shooter. But Jokic has kind of been up and down like that. Like 2022, Jokic like kind of shot poorly in the regular season, and then he kind of shot poorly against Golden State from the perimeter. Then last year, he was deadly all season, and then he was deadly all playoffs. This year, he was not nearly as effective as a jump shooter all regular season, and I kept calling it out on the show like, hey, Jokic's jumper is not quite where it was last year. And all Denver fans would say the same thing to me. They'd be like, oh, he always just ramps up the jump shot at the end of the year, and then he'll get it going. And it's like, here we are. And what was he, 2 for 9 in game 1 from 3? He was missing them in game 2 as well. Like, he just, a big part of what made Denver so unguardable last year was Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic just did not miss jump shots. And this year they are. And so that's kind of trimmed down their offensive ceiling a little bit. The second piece of it is they just haven't been as good defensively as they were last year. They just haven't been as good. Last year, Denver's defense was good, and it kind of extends out in a bunch of different directions. Like, remember last year, Anthony Davis just couldn't score one-on-one with Jokic? Like, he just couldn't. It was like 0 for 6, and then they just stopped trying. They're like, we can't go to AD down there. He can't score. And then this year, it's like AD's just literally frying him on national television, so it's like there's been a huge gap. The drop coverage stuff with Jokic hasn't been pretty either. There's been just a huge gap in overall kind of like ceiling for Denver on both ends of the floor compared to last year. And then Bruce Brown, like Christian Brown and Peyton Watson, they're athletes. They can do stuff. They can help. Bruce Brown was legitimately like a 6th starter last year. And not having him out there, and man, would he be valuable in a series like this against Minnesota in terms of just the physical force he can bring to the table. Like, you could, it's been a really, really interesting kind of like drop off there. But I'm really curious. This is the last thing I'll say about it. Like, I love the adversity part. You've been a Laker fan your whole life, right? Yeah. So you've seen Kobe's ups and downs. You've heard, you're familiar with the story. Like, there's no superstar journey that's just like straight ascension into the abyss. Like, there are highs and there are lows. Like, Kobe missed the playoffs a couple years in his prime, right? Or missed playoffs once and then lost in the first round. Like LeBron James, the 2011 finals, he had even going back to 2019 when he missed the playoffs with the Lakers, right? And you could say that about every player in NBA history, even the all-time greats. And it's like, here we are. You dominated last year. And now you kind of had a sketchy performance against the Lakers, and now you're getting your butt kicked. Like, what are you going to do? I want to see it. I'm really curious. This is their first little bit of adversity. And to me, that's when you kind of see the best of the best. And, like, I'm really curious if Jokic is going to pull the I don't care, I'm going to go home and hang out with my horses, or if it's going to be more of like a hell no, I'm not losing like this kind of thing. I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to Friday. I think it's a big time kind of inflection point for Denver's dynasty moving forward.
Again, like you said, all the all-time greats have like kind of an FU. We might lose this series, but I'm not going out like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Game 3 is going to be fun. And yeah, I mean, if Jokic kind of wants to further his legacy, which is a stupid talking point. I hate the word legacy now, but I mean, if Jokic want to further his status amongst the all-time greats, like Friday's gonna be and really just the rest of this series is gonna be a big testing point for Jokic, because like you said, this is the first bit of adversity we've seen Denver hit since they've been healthy, like ever. We have the bubble conference finals. Okay, cool, that was fun. Then Jamal starts to get hurt, MPJ's hurt, so nobody really counts the next couple of seasons for Denver.
Yeah, there's no expectations there. Adversity requires expectations. Like, it's different when LeBron rolls up in Boston in Game 6 in 2012, and it's like, hey, if you lose this game, they're going to destroy you. You know what I mean? Like, that's a totally different vibe than like, oh, you're expected to lose to Golden State in 5 games. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the team that the Denver beat, and that was the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Lakers did fire Darvin Ham. Jayson, what were your thoughts on the Lakers firing Darvin Ham?
I thought it had to happen. It was inevitable that there would be kind of a national media news cycle that took a more negative stance as it pertains to the Lakers, because, like, yeah, from the outside looking in, it's like, really, you're firing your coach again? But, like, the truth of the matter is if you look at the landscape of the league, like, the Lakers know that they're somewhat close. Like, if they hit a couple moves this summer, they can certainly compete and contend next year. And I don't think they want to go into a postseason or even just an entire regular season at a coaching disadvantage. And, like, the reality is I think they hired Darvin because they thought he'd be like Ime Udoka. I think they thought he'd be like this big accountability machine. Basically a guy that would be like, hey, LeBron, you got to do better. Hey, AD, you got to do better, so on and so forth. And I thought, because that was the big thing with Frank Vogel at the end, is there was just no buy-in, which ironically is exactly what happened in Phoenix. And so maybe that's something that could be said about Frank Vogel. But the two big things for Darvin that I thought were the death sentence for him, one, just complete talent mismanagement. The way he utilized the roster this year, just prioritizing in favor to the favoritism he showed towards lesser players on the roster. The comp that I used is like the way that they benched D'Angelo Russell for Cam Reddish. That would be like if Derek White had like a couple of rough weeks and they were like, that's it, Derek, you're going to the bench, bring in Peyton Pritchard. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't make any sense. You'd be like, why? Or like, hey, all right, Jaylen Brown had a couple of rough weeks. Let's bring Sam Hauser into the starting lineup. You're like, what are you doing? Like it wouldn't make any sense. Like it wasn't like you were benching D'Angelo Russell to bring in Spencer Dinwiddie. You were benching D'Angelo Russell to bring in Cam Reddish, an NBA journeyman who just wasn't a very good basketball player. And like the stat that blows me away is in that 13-game stretch where they went 3-10 post in-season tournament, D'Lo was playing as many minutes as Cam Reddish and attempting as many shots as Taurean Prince. And regardless of how you feel about D'Lo in the big picture, he was obviously one of their 5 best players, and certainly
top 4.
Like, easily certainly top 4, maybe top 3. I think Austin's better, but certainly top 4. Yeah. And like, and it's one of those things where, like, in the context of the regular season too, he obviously brings a great deal of value. It just in terms of the capability he has of going off. And D'Lo too is one of those guys where even on the nights where he goes 0 for 9, people guard him. Like he gets guarded on the 3-point line. It's a spacing thing. You know what I mean? So Darvin.
Insane.
It's insane. It was, you know what's crazy? All this stuff with Darvin, people are like acting like Lakers fans are turning on him at the last second. We were all in the moment like, what is he doing?
What's he doing? Bro, 90% of the fan base was saying this stuff last season, right?
Oh,
and I was one of the guys that, unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately now because I can't like escape a day without being reminded that I did one Darvin Ham, right? For starters, that coaching hiring cycle wasn't the best, so
hey, Sean, we're not in on the interviews. We operate under limited. Like I would imagine, if you and I sat in the interviews and we talked with him, we might have a different perspective. But we had to go based purely off of like the only information we had is like in the Bud coaching tree, right? Yeah. And like, oh, we kind of saw something work with Ime Udoka, where this like former player who can like look eye to eye with these guys. That's really all the information we had.
And
welcome to school.
Welcome to school. That really touches into one of my biggest pet peeves with the NBA. And I've talked about this a lot. Is how what the NFL does a good job of. So like, let's say you're a Seahawks fan, right? I love this example. If you're a Seahawks fan and you fire Pete Carroll or you let Pete Carroll go or whatever, you're like, okay, cool. Who can we hire to replace Pete Carroll? Oh, who's this Mike McDonald guy? What does he do? Oh, he's a defensive coordinator for the Ravens. That's easy. Now, to prepare for that as a content creator or just a fan, I can say, all right, let me go watch the Ravens defense to get an idea of what Mike McDonald's going to do, right? Because he was the Ravens defense coordinator. For the Lakers, let's say you're like a Laker fan and you're interested in David Alderman. If you don't know what David Alderman does, you're like, okay, all I know is he's a Denver Nuggets assistant coach, and like you're kind of banking on him bringing in some of the Michael Malone stuff. Like, bro, this is just a pet peeve of mine. NBA, basketball in general, please list what your assistant coaches does. It just helps enhance the knowledge of your fan base and of the people covering your league.
There's specific responsibilities. Like, this guy's our offensive coordinator. This guy's in charge of player development. This guy, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. That's all you have to do. Like, and then I love that you brought up the 0 for 9 piece and how they have to guard him. So this is like personal experience with me. So remember the player that we were talking about for my team off air? We had and this is a blunder on my part. I think, again, I'm glad you touched on this part too. Darvin's biggest downfall was just the lack of accountability, I think, that he would take. That's one of his bigger downfalls.
100% agree. He was too benevolent.
Yep, exactly. And this is like the accountability you have to take as coach. So this is our state tournament game this year, right? So the player, our best shooter, didn't play well in the first half. So we made a decision to go with our backup 2. And he was a better defender, was part of our best lineup in the first half to help us make a comeback. And even though the shooter, and the guy that's a backup, he is a good shooter, just not the level of shooter that the other guy is a starter, we made the switch. and the way the defense guards our actions are completely different. So like even if you're a high level shooter, you can go like Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, for lack of better terms, was not a good basketball player this season. But the fear of Klay Thompson will always have you guard him. Always. Because like I think
reputation matters more. Yeah, 100%.
Reputation matters more. So if you're a shooter or a guy that can shoot and you go 0 for 10, it doesn't matter, because if it's the fourth quarter, Jayson's a good shooter, best believe I'm guarding Jayson Tatum from the 3-point line, regardless if he's 0 for 10 or not. Because who knows? He might hit the game winner. He goes 1 for 11, but hey, he hit the game winner. So yeah, I think that was a bizarre. And then especially because your offense was already mediocre at the time, so you just go from mediocre offense to worse offense instantly. Remember the Boston game?
You have to put your best players so like at the end of the day, like the starting lineup, the Austin, D'Lo, Rui, LeBron, AD. That's not a super functional starting lineup. Honestly, it's interesting looking back, because before the season, I don't know if I think our last pod in the playoffs. It might have been in the playoffs last year, but
it was preseason. Like
okay, it was preseason this year then.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, yeah. So I would imagine, I don't remember exactly, but I would imagine you and I talked about this. And one of the big things, like, because I remember all summer talking about, like, hey, this is all great. I'm glad we resigned all these guys, but D'Lo plays the same position as Austin. Rui plays the same position as LeBron. So there's never going to be enough optimization as long as all those guys are kind of being relied on. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the two guys who were a major letdown in this playoff run were D'Lo and Rui, the two guys that were being asked to do things that were kind of beyond their purview, right? And like when it really comes down to it, the coaching piece that I wanted to hit back on, you called it accountability, and I 100% agree. The other kind of like terminology I'd use is like I almost consider it like active coaching versus passive coaching. And what I mean by that is like it felt like Darvin was a super passive coach. Like he'd get with his staff, he'd put his game plan together, and then he'd get out there and it'd be a lot of, come on guys, let's go, keep it, that kind of thing. And then what would happen
only on the game plan that you already had established.
Yeah, well, most importantly, like here's the thing. Second possession of the game, if, Rui loses Michael Porter Jr. chasing around a screen,
sure.
The very next stoppage, you call him over and you used to say, like, what are you doing? Get it together. We need, and it's so interesting watching the juxtaposition of Mike Malone with Darvin Ham, where Mike is like active on the sidelines, yelling at his guys, like, going to the press conferences after the game and ripping them a new one for not guarding the paint and screaming at them in the huddle. Like there's a level of, and I think that was the big difference between Ime Udoka and Darvin Ham is like, Darvin Ham is a motivator, but he's a benevolent motivator. It's like, you got this, I believe in you kind of thing. Ime Udoka is more of like you're a bum, stop being a bum kind of guy, and like, do you remember early in that Celtics season how they hated him? They hated him. Like exactly. And then all of a sudden it's like you fast forward 3 months.
Fired.
Yeah. And then you fast forward 3 months and they're the toughest team in the league and they sweep the Celtics have never looked like they did under Ime Udoka since. They've never looked like it. They've won, but they've never had that like the 2022 Celtics felt like they overachieved to their talent. Like it was like they were just holy crap, this is one of the best defenses we've seen in a long time. Like Tatum and Jaylen Brown are defending like they never have. There's like this level of intensity and focus and toughness, and under Mazzulla it just has not been the same. They've been more talented, but they haven't had the same like level of like mental toughness. And like I think it's super fascinating because like that honestly was where I think this went south. They hired a guy who was not necessarily he certainly wasn't experienced, but he was not necessarily a tactician. He was a motivator. and he wasn't motivating or holding the team accountable. So you weren't getting his upside, and obviously his weaknesses were shining through. That honestly, we mentioned the mismanaging of the talent. That second piece that I was going to say, the biggest one for me was the lack of accountability. He never held the team accountable, so they were prone to these ugly stretches where they'd go 7-8 possessions in a row where they don't know, to AD's point, where they don't know what they're doing on either end of the floor. And it's like any serious NBA team gets 2 possessions like that, and the coach is like, they call a timeout, they're yelling at him in the huddle, or if they don't want to use a timeout, they're active. They're out on the court screaming at the guys, like, what do you do? Like, think about all Eric Spoelstra does this, Ty Lue does this.
You remember that,
all of them.
that Heat blow up last year? No, it wasn't last year. It was 2 years ago now, I think, where Spo and Jimmy are like in each other's faces.
Yeah.
Involved, and everybody on Twitter is going crazy, like, "Oh my god, like this isn't it." No, it's not. Like this is for a really good team. Like, okay, maybe that's extreme, but that's fairly normal for a really good
it's
team.
fairly normal.
That would also normally happen in the locker room, which is why I would say that's maybe extreme, but that's quite normal. And I think, and I'm glad you touched on it, I think what made you know that Darvin had to be fired is, like you said, the thing that got Darvin hired in the first place was, okay, good, he's a motivator, he's gonna hold these guys accountable. You know, maybe he's not the sharpest X's and O's guy, right? But he's good enough, in air quotes, to where, you know, we don't have to worry about it enough. And the moment that the locker room felt to be lost, okay, that had to be when you were like, yep, it doesn't matter. Unless you win a championship, he's gone. Because your job is to be, same thing like if you're an offensive coordinator or offensive genius and your offense is bottom 10 in the league, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, you got to go. So I think it was the right decision. Again, the national media is going to be like, well, LeBron is a coach killer. No, the coaches you give him suck.
Yeah,
Luke Walton for his first year in LA.
He killed David Blatt for sure.
He did. He absolutely did.
He tried to kill Spo, and Pat Riley didn't let him. Which, by the way, shout out to Pat Riley, because Pat Riley gets it. But like, Luke Walton had to go. Frank Vogel. The one thing with Frank Vogel. Yeah, the thing with Frank Vogel, I think that had a little bit more to do with Russell Westbrook. Like, yeah. I think Frank Vogel is a good NBA coach. I think he needs to coach a younger, more impressionable team, because this is back-to-back situations where the superstars kind of tuned him out. And I don't know what it is about Frank, but for some reason the stars don't respect. Like, the big one that stood out to me was, I don't know if you remember this. It was right before the Timberwolves series, I think. Mm-hmm. But somebody asked Booker about Frank Vogel's film sessions, and Booker kind of like a disrespectful way was like, yeah, Frank's really proud of his film sessions, and it was kind of like sarcastic. And I wanted to be like, that's his job. Like, how it bothered me so much, because I was like, okay, you're the player, so you're putting in the work behind the scenes to be the best player you can be to help your team. You have this other guy, he has a job too. He's the coach. His job is to scout and come up with a game plan. And he pours his heart and soul into that, and you're making light of it like it's a joke. But for whatever reason, they hate on Frank, and that bothers me. But I really do think the big thing with Frank was I think Frank knew right away, Russ is bad. Mm-hmm. I can't play Russ because of all these different things. And then the front office was like, but we have to keep Russ for a little while. We might even keep him in the long run. And so then they were like, well, we can't keep Frank. And so then they went into the coaches' interviews and was like, who's going to use Russ? And Darvin's like, I'll use Russ, and I'll make it work. And
everybody else is kind of
yeah, exactly. But like the majority, I agree with you. I think a lot of the stuff that's happened with the Lakers has primarily been based on the organization's incompetence. But LeBron definitely had something to do with David Blatt, and wanted to do something about Eric Spoelstra. So some of it's fair, but that is, anytime there's a big national take like that, it's always like a mix between like reality and kind of fantasy, you know?
Yeah. Let's get to Boston, and you know, we're gonna not spend too much time for the rest of the show. The word you used to describe Denver earlier was like they haven't faced adversity yet, and I'm really, really curious. I don't think it's gonna happen this series, but let's say you get a Boston New York series, and that's gonna be the last thing I'm gonna touch on before we wrap up. Let's say we get to a Boston New York series, right? I wonder, because I think New York's the only team in the East that could really throw a punch at Boston, and Boston has to go, whoa, wait, we just got punched for the first time all playoffs. And I mean, sure they got punched by Miami, but it's more like a jab, and you're Mike Tyson and I'm Sean Davis. Like, okay, Sean threw a nice jab at me. I mean, oh well, right? And that's kind of how that Miami series was. Can anybody beat Boston? And do you think Boston is ready to hit that potential adversity? Because the East has been a cakewalk for them all season, and then when they do, I mean, potentially get to the finals, and you run into the brick wall that is the Minnesota Timberwolves right now, or the Red Hot Thunder, Luka and the Mavs, Jokic, if they're able to get their stuff together. So, can anybody beat Boston? What's just your take on that Boston team right now?
So I still think they're the most talented roster left. Boston has been a team, and again, like Celtics fans think I hate them because I'm a Lakers fan, but like that's not the case at all. Actually, the 2022 Celtics were a team I really liked, the team that made the finals. There was something about their basketball character that I really appreciated, and I really liked some of the stuff we saw from Jayson Tatum in that playoff run.
If he wasn't a Celtic, I would have bought his jersey that year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like he was on one that year. Like the big thing with 2022 Jayson Tatum is I thought he was the best perimeter defender in the league. Like he was unbelievable that year. And then immediately after Missoula came in, Tatum just kind of like slipped defensively and wasn't the same guy. But like this Celtics team, I find them kind of unlikable for a few reasons. One, I hate their offense. This like incessant jump shot hunting and the refusal to kind of capitalize on some of their athletic advantages around the paint has made them so susceptible to variance that like every single Celtics loss has looked exactly the same. They stop making jump shots and then their offense falls apart. Like that's what happens. And every other game they make the jump shots and they win. Like last night against the Cavs, classic like good Celtics game. It's like the jumpers are falling. We hit 19 threes. Derek White hits 7 more threes and you get to lose. It's like, that's the classic like Celtics win right now. Right. But down the stretch of the season, it's like they lost to the Clippers. They lost to the Nuggets. They lost to the Timberwolves. They lost to I think the Timberwolves one was early in the season, but then they lost to the Lakers. They lost to all these teams, the Bucks twice. They lost to all these teams at the tail end of the season and then won every other game. But those losses were all exactly the same. They couldn't make a jump shot. Offense fell apart. Then they lost. And so I don't like their offensive approach. I don't like that they don't have like a real hierarchy in the sense that like I'm watching last night and it's like they come out the gates and it's like Jayson Tatum's just not doing anything and they're running everything through Jaylen Brown and like just randomly. And then they'll be like, oh, actually we're going to shift here. Now it's all Derek White and Jayson Tatum. I remember the Boston Celtics game, or the Denver Nuggets game earlier this year. It's like late game, close game, clutch time. There's randomly a stretch where it's like Drew Holiday's just taking over the offense here down the stretch. You're like, what is going on? There's like no clean hierarchy with that Boston group. So like I think that's part of the reason why I haven't been a fan of this particular team. That said, the major concern that I have for them in this postseason run is that specific lack of adversity. They haven't played very many close games. And right now, they're in yet another easy series while everyone else in the league is in a war. Like, Pacers Knicks is a war. Mavs Thunder is going to be a war. Like, the Nuggets are literally getting pounded into the turf right now. Like, there's all of these wars going on. And so what happens when Boston does get into a war? And everyone else is kind of conditioned for that, and they're not. Will they fall into an early series hole? Something along those lines. But at the same time, you can't write off the talent. And like, if I was like, hey, Sean, let's fast forward 2 months. Boston sweeps Cleveland. They get New York out in 5, and they beat Minnesota in 6. Would you be stunned? No, because they have all the talent in the world. And like specifically that Minnesota matchup. One of the weaknesses with Denver that Minnesota is exposing is their lack of ball handling. Like, really, Jokic and Murray are the only 2 guys that can, and Reggie Jackson, who's hurt, are the only 3 guys who can, like, credibly bring the ball up the floor against pressure. And even they're struggling.
Back to why they're missing Bruce Brown.
Absolutely.
Earlier.
You're right. Bruce Brown ran the point a lot when he basically was their point when Jamal Murray was off the floor. And so, like, they're struggling with the ball pressure piece. Boston has a ton of ball handling. And so they can identify, Karl Towns is going to have to guard one of the Jays, and that guy is going to be able to bring the ball up the floor. Yeah, and bring the ball up the floor without ball pressure. They can really spread out Minnesota's defense too. So like Boston, it's not a done deal. I think if Minnesota faced Boston, I'd be tempted to still pick Minnesota just because of their overwhelming perimeter defense and some of the offensive limitations of all of those guys. But like Boston's certainly capable, and you can't write them off. They just have made themselves super susceptible to variance, and I also wouldn't be surprised if they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like they just have a wide range of outcomes for me. What about you?
I think with Boston, for one, like you said, they just have such a freaking talented roster. Where if I had to ask you how many top 50 players the Celtics had, would you say 5? Because that's kind
five,
of
yeah, easily 5. Yeah,
like easily those starting 5. That's starting 5 in. And
Derek White is creeping into top 25 territory. He's been so damn good.
He's been ridiculous. I mean, D'Lo said that I want to be like Derek White. Well, Derek White is balling right now.
Yeah. Did you see that snatchback dribble he hit Sam Merrill with last night? Like it was a late clock. It was his last 3 he hit. It was late clock. Tristan Thompson trapped him out at half court, and he hit like a retreat dribble. Tristan ran off. There was like 4 seconds on the shot clock, and he just goes like 3 hard dribbles to the right and snatch back behind the back, and then just elevates and knocks down the pull-up 3. I was like, that was nasty. It was like a superstar shot, dude. It was crazy.
Derek White's development's been so fun to watch, and I am happy for him, especially watching him from San Antonio. I've always liked Derek White. I think, and I'm glad you brought this point up, I think there are a lot of situations where you have too many ball handlers on one team, and it's a bad thing, and like, you described it as a hierarchy, but it's like all the negative things about it where, okay, how are we going to get to almost like Phoenix, right? Where you're like, okay, they have too many ball handlers to the point where KD's most effective with the ball in his hands. Brad,
but he's standing in the corner too much. Yeah,
exactly. But Boston's able to get it right. It's so fun to kind of watch that work at times.
When it works, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
It's frightening because you're like, oh my god, they've hit 7 threes in the last 11 possessions. This is in all different guys.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think one of the more frustrating, I don't even think it's scary, frustrating parts, specifically about Jayson Tatum. I think you've talked about this a ton recently, where Tatum will do this thing where it's almost, I don't even know what to describe as him getting bored, but he'll just settle instead of realizing, wait, I'm like bigger, faster, stronger than 90% of the people in the league. Let me just go get efficient shots at the rim, maybe draw more fouls, stuff like that, because I think Tatum does turn into a jump shot chucker. It's like, my guy, get to the basket. And I think that can be something, like you said, if they get into just shooting inefficient jumpers, I think a team can like make a series out of them. Maybe New York's able to do it. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm curious to see how far this Boston team goes.
The Tatum pull-up jump shooting piece is interesting because he got hot for like a month in late December, early January. And all the Celtics fans were coming after me. They're like, see, he's been practicing it so that he can get it going, and he's starting to get it going. And then Tatum post All-Star break, 0.94 points per pull-up jumper. That's not good. And then Tatum so far in the postseason, once I haven't even seen it updated after last night, but before last night, he was like 0.95 points per pull-up jump shot. So like, he's just not good at that shot, and he takes it a ton. And last night, once again, like I was watching the game last night. He'll just take super contested pull-up threes like as part of his offense. And then the last piece of it, the settling. I'm curious to hear your take on it. The thing that separates Ant from Tatum for me is the first step.
Yeah.
Tatum
twitch is insane.
Yeah, Tatum is a big, strong athlete, and he has a lot of physical advantages over certain types of players.
Yeah.
But Anthony Edwards has a first step that'll beat every defender in the league. And Tatum just doesn't.
You remember that movie hit on Aaron Gordon in game 1 where I think it's Jay McDaniels in the right corner, he's on the right wing, and he isolates Aaron Gordon, and he goes tween cross. But like the way he does his tween is so quick to where he goes to the cross back, Aaron Gordon is still stuck in the spot where Anthony Edwards went to his between the leg move, and now he just created so much space for himself to hit.
And there wasn't a lot of space on that spot on the floor either. Like
No.
it was a tight space, and that's the key, because the things they do to Ant are the same things they do to Tatum. So Tatum will isolate on the wing, and they'll kind of dig down into his driving lanes, and it'll look like a tight space environment, and then he'll respond by settling for a pull-up jumper from 3 or in that area.
Yeah.
Ant is so damn fast, and he gets so much lift on his pull-up jumper. Even in those like tight space situations, he can find separation and get like really good lift on a shot. So like, I just think Ant has so much more upside than Tatum. Like, there's Celtics fans are like, oh, but he's got all this on his resume. Oh yeah, no, you're right. Tatum's older, and he's been playing on the most talented roster in the league. Big shock that he's won a lot of big games. Like, and I'm not trying to say Tatum's not a good player. I think he's a top 10 player in the league. I think there is a 0% chance of Tatum passing the Jokic, Luka, Giannis tier. Like 0% chance.
No chance.
Ant is like in the process of doing it right now. like there's
by demolishing Denver.
It's different.
He's in the process of doing it.
Yeah, it's different. It's different.
Let's end with some rapid fire stuff here. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. So let's have some fun with this. Name your top 3. You don't have to rank them. If you want to, that'd be fun. Name the top 3 point guards in the Eastern Conference right now.
Top 3 point guards in Eastern Conference. Jalen Brunson is definitely number 1.
Okay.
Dude, I think Donovan Mitchell, I was actually talking about this on my show the other day. Last year, the 2 top point guards, small guards in the league were, in my opinion, Steph and Dame. And like, it's probably Brunson and Mitchell this year. Like, and I'm talking in the league, forget the Western Conference. I'm talking small guards too, so like underneath 6'4" or whatever. But I'd probably go Brunson, Mitchell, and then Maxey is my top 3 off the top of my head.
Okay.
What about you?
Mine would be, I think it's hard to not say Brunson right now.
Yeah, as he's going on Michael Jordan run.
Yeah, it's insane. Brunson, I think what Donovan Mitchell's also done this playoff run, you have to respect. I'm a big Trae Young guy, probably to like a fault at this point.
So you want him on the Lakers then?
Yeah, but I'm not gonna. Every time I talk about Trae to the Lakers, I get a bunch of, oh man, this Sean guy is a stupid idiot. I mean, really, I mainly want Trae for like post Braun, because my thought process is, okay, what the hell do we do when Braun leaves if you go the depth route? Conversation for a different day. But I think I would go Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young. I think that's personally where I would land.
Not a bad pick. And honestly, Tyrese Alberton, if he ever can kind of get back to where he was before he hurt his hamstring, to me, Tyrese Alberton is like he's like Steve Nash 2.0, and like I think he'd probably be second on that list when he's healthy and in rhythm. But it's just Tyrese just has not been able to regain that burst since he hurt his hammy. Dude, that actually reminds me of Devin Booker. Like Devin Booker's career has been like up and down like this too, and most of it is because of the damn hamstring. Like when it's almost like they don't trust their body to like make super explosive moves. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, last one. Who wins the NBA championship this year?
Gun to my head right now, I'm going to say Minnesota. If they're allowed to defend like this, and if Anthony Edwards is going to play like the best player in the world, it's like the best defense in the league. They've been the best offense in the playoffs. Karl Towns is playing extremely well. A lot of key guys are hitting shots, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker being kind of like a knockdown 3-point shooter is huge. Like I think that Minnesota is in like a really, really special hot streak right now. I give Boston a good chance to beat them, and I'd certainly put them second. But gun to my head right now, I'd pick Minnesota.
I would agree with you right now. I want to give some shouts to my guys in OKC. Easily probably my second favorite team to watch, but I think like you said, Minnesota is doing it special. And either way, for me as a basketball fan, if you're telling me in my conference finals could be Ant versus Luka or Ant versus SGA, I don't care. Just give me
Ant versus SGA would be a fun, because remember their little barbs early in the season. What was it? Shay that got asked if he was better than Ant or vice versa? I can't remember.
I think it was Ant. I can't remember.
Okay, yeah, and then like Shay was like, yeah, I expect him to feel that way. Like that's we're competitors, blah blah blah. But Shay versus Ant would be a really fun one. It just in kind of like they're both they're both kind of viewed in that like up and coming could pass the top guys tier.
Yep.
That would be a really fun one. But I'm not gonna lie, man. Like, can you imagine that Minnesota defense against Oklahoma City? Like, ugh, there's a lot of thin,
so
kind of
fun.
wiry young players. Do you think I picked Dallas to beat OKC? Did you pick OKC?
I picked OKC at first, and then I did the film breakdown on that series. And after I did the film breakdown, it's like, damn, I think I'm gonna go Dallas. But I'm starting to get a little bit worried about Luka, just a little bit. To where like it's definitely a thought creeping in the back of my head. That's another series where like I'm like intensively watching each game. Game 2, I'm so excited. It sucks that because of how late the series started, that series is almost every other day until at least after game 3. So I'm like, okay, damn, that's kind of rough for me. But yeah, I think I did have Dallas winning in 7, but my initial pick was OKC in 7. So
you're supposed to bully OKC. Like, that's your advantage. OKC's small, they can't defensive rebound. Like, you can do a lot of damage to them on the front line. Yeah. And OKC bullied Dallas last night. They got destroyed on the front line. Like, Chet was amazing in that game. So like, that's the thing is like, I picked Dallas, but like, if Dallas just gets punked on the front line, they could be out of here in 5 games. Like, they could be in some serious trouble.
Well, Jayson, I could take any much more of your time. Thank you so much, bro, for hopping on. And also make sure you guys go check out Jayson's work. Like I said earlier, Hoops Tonight Show does great work. One of the best analysts out there right now. Jayson, my dog, thank you so much for hopping on. This is a pleasure.
No problem, man. This was fun. I'm glad we were able to make it work. Keep doing everything you're doing. I appreciate you and all your hard work, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.